Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to the show. This is the Beyond the Vault weekly updates with Mr. Andy Scheckman. You can find his work at milesfranklin.com. Andy, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
JC, it's always good to see you, brother, and thank you for having me. I'm good, thank you.
Always good to have you on the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today for this update. Andy, I had the pleasure and honor to have an interview with Bill Holter yesterday, one of your famous compadres and official broker there at Miles Franklin. He wrote a piece this weekend, and maybe we can start with that, suggesting that this next week or two could be very, very interesting in the precious metals complex. He was pointing at the charts for gold, silver, and the HUI. Let me bring that up for the audience members here. Let's start with gold. Have you seen this, first of all? And
I have.
okay, and let's break it down a little bit more. We talked about a lot of geopolitical stuff yesterday too, but I wanted to get into this in more detail. How is this translating? Are you already seeing this translate in purchases right now, or is this something that's just about to burst in your mind?
Well, what I find really interesting, JC, is I think that the charts are reflective of something else that I see going on. In other words, the charts are telling us what's happening, but why? Why is it happening that way?
Right.
And I think that that's really the question. And over the past 60 days, the increase in transactions in the Shanghai Gold Exchange have increased over 200%, and they're exploding. In fact, when you put together the Shanghai Gold Exchange with the Shanghai Futures Exchange, the number of transactions have increased to the point where they are now greater than the COMEX market. They have actually surpassed the COMEX market, making the Shanghai Gold Exchange the number two most influential gold trading hub on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a really, really, really big deal. I think the acceleration of accumulation of metal by China in particular and the BRICS nations is painting the tape. You know, Bill's talking about the convergence and you know, all of the things technically. That's true. I mean, you could even look to the cup and handle formation, the 12-year cup and handle formation that's just broken through it to the upside.
Mm-hmm.
After 12 years. That's about as bullish as it gets, put together with the moving averages that Bill's talking about. I think it's the what is that China is massively accumulating gold and silver. They are selling treasuries to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that what Bill is talking about is very accurate, at least from a technical standpoint. All the technicals, whether it be a much bigger one like the cup and handle formation or the moving averages here, the convergence of them, I am very, very optimistic, if you will, that this move is real. How far does it go? I don't know, but you can certainly see the acceleration where to see the volume pick up to the degree that we're seeing in the Shanghai right now is unprecedented. And it seems to me real. They're the catalyst behind it. The central banks and the Chinese are the catalyst behind what's going on.
Now, it's funny because in the last show last week, I think it was on the day of or maybe the day after, I'm not sure we reported on it, but the IMF was putting out a warning to expect the death of the dollar, basically. And what just happened this week is something that you've been talking about for quite some time now. We're starting to see the emergence here of these alternatives to the payment systems around the world and world settlement. So this is the BRICS is preparing to launch an independent blockchain-based system called BRICS Pay. The next step to completely end the use of the dollar in interstate trade. We're almost here, Andy. What do you make of this one here? Let's expand on this a little bit and what it means for this rapid sale here or this de-dollarization move that we've been seeing in earnest accelerate over the last year. But what does it mean moving forward?
Well, I think it dovetails in really well in the first question in that I think that's why we're part of the reason we're seeing gold move the way that it is. Gold and oil in particular, I think, are being remonetized. And, you know, I think the new BRICS Pay system will use Project Enbridge. Project Enbridge was the technology developed by United Arab Emirates, who just joined the BRICS, and China, and I think Singapore. I think the third country I always forget. But The first two trades that Project Enbridge did last year, the first one was for oil, and the second one was for gold. Cross-border payment system using the yuan, digital yuan. And so we've also seen there is a new payment system that the Belt Road Initiative just developed, and it is a cross-border payment system for settling transactions. All of these systems, the BRICS Pay, the Project Enbridge, the new payment system on the Belt Road, which is connecting 75% of human population, mind you, 150 plus countries, all of them sidestep SWIFT. What is the mechanism of sanctions? It's SWIFT. And so the ability, if you look right now, even the SIP system, the cross interbank payment system, which is a system that China has, it's a competitor to SWIFT. Last year, it did almost 36,000 transactions for over $17 trillion. All of these things are chipping away at the dollar hegemony. And so you will continue to see more and more and more of this. And so what the BRICS are doing is they are settling in local currencies. All of the transactions are settling in local currencies, huge amounts, but then they are using gold to take the excess. The gold and oil that excess used to go into U.S. Treasuries. It is now going into gold. It's going into oil. It's putting a floor under the price of gold. And, if you look, there was almost $600 million worth of gold delivered off of COMEX to Brinks, Hong Kong, a week ago Friday, and all in kilo bars. Now, most of what COMEX does is 100-ounce bars. The mini contracts are in kilos, and so they delivered literally almost over $500 million worth of gold bars to Brinks, Hong Kong, which is then shuttled over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And so these mechanisms that they are using, all of these countries are using the BRICS Pay, the Project Enbridge, or any of the SIPs, any of these systems to transact sales and purchases of commodities in local currencies, and then settling or using the balance to put into things like oil and into gold. And, this is a trend that we will see accelerate. I mentioned many months ago to you that at the beginning of the year, there was going to be 200 meetings in the BRICS up to the big meeting in October. And these are the revelations that keep coming up. The big one in October, obviously. But yes, BRICS Pay is just another way of chipping away at the dollar hegemony. The settlement status, the reserve status is being chipped away at by using commodities in favor of or instead of in lieu of U.S. Treasuries. This will be more and more and more that we'll continue to hear over the next several months.
Let's get into that. You just mentioned oil there. I saw on Zero Hedge earlier this morning that Putin was set to visit China here to discuss energy ties, in part to discuss expanding energy and trade partnerships. What do you make of that too? Are you hearing rumblings of either new announcements or acceleration of these trades that are done outside of the US dollar? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, all the BRICS countries are paying for oil and gas and other commodities in their own currencies. They are. And these currencies, then they are net recycling into physical gold reserves, which is what? The only other tier one asset. Why else would the volume on the Shanghai Gold Exchange pick up the way that it has by over 200% in the last 60 days? What they do is Russia will sell their oil at a massive discount. They're doing it at a huge discount to what regular oil is going for on the market, like almost a 50% discount to countries like China. And they'll accept either the digital yuan or the petro yuan bond. Both are convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which is the only other tier one asset. So when you see HSBC Bank drive down the price of gold and silver on the COMEX, that's who we think it is right now. And then massive deliveries. The vault, Hong Kong has that Brinks COMEX vault, which is a COMEX facility or a COMEX vault. And anything that goes into that vault is exchanged for physical. So the paper price gets driven down in the West. They take delivery. They buy contracts, take delivery in China of almost $600 million worth. It's then Brinks Hong Kong. There's a truck that brings it right over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange so that a country like Russia can sell their oil at a discount to China, incentivizing them to do it, taking the digital yuan, which chips away at the dollar settlement status, and then taking the proceeds and immediately converting it into gold, which is now being replenished by our own Western stockpiles because we're so stupid to suppress the price, allow the price to be suppressed, and then deliver it to China. They're in essence sidestepping sanctions. So that's how Russia would sidestep sanctions imposed upon them, selling their oil to China for the yuan, converting it into gold, which is the only other tier one asset. And if you look at what the Russian finance minister has been saying for years, Sergei Glaznev, we will issue a currency that will be backed by a basket of commodities and a basket of local currencies. That commodity's got to be gold. It's the only other tier one asset. Now, there may be oil in there too, would make sense to me. But especially when you see the Project M Bridge, the first two trades were oil and then gold. It's being remonetized, and it is not influenced by the sanctions of the West. This is exactly what they are doing, 100% what they were doing, and I think it will continue to do it that way. I mean, even look at China did a deal with Iran, and they just struck a deal to modernize their biggest airport. The whole deal is being paid for in oil. These all used to settle in dollars. Right. Now they're not. And so the West, because of our, going to China and saying to Xi Jinping, listen, we're okay with you being friends with Putin. And you see they're shaking his hand. But if you give any money to them for their war machine, we will sanction your banks, your companies, and even Beijing. Don't worry about the fact we've given $200 billion to the Ukraine with no congressional oversight, because we can do that because we're the world reserve currency and it's our prerogative. But you can't. Yeah. This is not sitting well with other countries. So yes, this is exactly what is happening, and it will only accelerate as far as I'm concerned.
You can only have the policy of rules for thee, not for me, for so long. And I think that's what we're seeing now, like a big movement out of that. I'm going to have, interestingly enough, for the folks who are watching the show here today, thank you first of all for joining us. I'll have Jim Willie on at 3 p.m. Eastern today. We have a special report. He wanted to talk about how, in his opinion here, we're going to see a bull market in gold for at least 2 more years. I've seen some other analysts talk about this and why we're in this third phase of the gold bull market. And he says he has 20 reasons why. So don't miss that show. That's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern. Andy, I wanted to come back to you on this one. You and I talked on the weekend. This was after our last show. And I was interested in this article on May 10th from Zero Hedge. Most central bank gold buying is unreported. In a stunning new report, Goldman sees significantly higher gold prices. What did you get by this? Like, are the numbers even worse than we thought? We're seeing now rapid clip buying. They've been front running this trade here for a number of years. You've been detailing that. But what does this article really mean about the accumulation of gold maybe that's been happening below the radar?
Well, even an analyst from your neck of the woods, Bank of Montreal, came out and said that, yeah, China is accumulating way more than we are being told. And by the way, I've seen many of those 20 reasons that Jim is talking about. They're fascinating. And some of the things that we're talking about here today, but that's a do not miss episode. He's a smart dude, and give him my regards.
Will do.
But yeah, that's exactly what, the Bank of Montreal analyst said, no, they're accumulating way more. Alistair McLeod says they have 38,000 metric tons, which would be 5 times what we have, 18,000 by the people, 20,000 by the state. They have been producing gold at uneconomic levels for years, using our trade imbalance, selling us their party favors and trinkets, and using it to mine gold even when it wasn't economical. And so there is no question. In fact, last year was very interesting, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was an article that was picked up by Bloomberg, I want to say, and Reuters, and it talked about all of this gold that was being shipped out of the country from west to east. And it said there's a mysterious gold whale, and they didn't know who it was. And there was I don't remember the amount. I wish I did. But over 40 or 50% of all the gold that they said, this much is going to Saudi Arabia, to India, to Russia. But over 40% of it, they said they didn't know who was buying it. It was mysterious. And they assumed it was the BRICS nations. And that's just exactly it, is that,
right.
I think that China is a prime example of it. They want us to believe they only have a few thousand metric tons. They rarely update their numbers. And when they do, no one really believes them. So it wouldn't be in anyone's vested interest to tell anyone how much they have. I think that is exactly what has been going on.
Do you think Do you leave the possibility that there are, for lack of better terms, white hats or people who are looking out for the best interests of the United States? Do you believe that there's a possibility that we here are also accumulating gold underneath the radar to prep for this collapse and to maybe a return to any type of sound money? Do you think that's possible, or are we
Well, I mean,
so?
where did the 12 billion in gold go that the Ukraine sold to fund their war? Where did Saddam Hussein's gold go? Where did Gaddafi's gold go? Maybe we take it in less than honest ways. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Why why has the Fed not really told us who's been repatriating all their gold? We know that there are a bunch of, I mean, Representative Mooney, who just lost his seat, I believe, which is a real bummer. It was the one who asked for the Freedom of Information Act to find out who was repatriating their gold from the New York Fed. We did find out recently that it's many of the African nations and the Middle East nations, including Egypt and Saudi Arabia, along with Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, and Algeria. Before that, it was the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the German Bundesbank, all of these countries repatriating their gold. So, yeah, I think that we don't know how much gold these countries hold, but I think it has been a mission for them ever since 2019, when the BIS reclassified gold as tier one, to accumulate as much as they can and to be less than forthright about it. So yeah, I think that's exactly the case, 100%.
could you also talk about, and I know this is conjecture at this part, but if you were to add up Saddam's gold, Gaddafi's gold, Ukraine's gold, is that just a mere drop in the bucket compared to what perhaps China is producing in country that never leaves the country on top of their imports in gold? Is that just a drop of the bucket? Because if so, we would have to be doing another operation on a much bigger size, again, under the radar, to try to be able to compete with them in this type of transition to a gold standard of sorts here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. Now, I don't know what's going on. I can only say this in regards to silver, and it may not be a real good comparison, but Bix Weir, our mutual buddy Bix, he did a three-part interview with Jack Sermon, which is one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my career.
Yeah.
Literally almost fell off my raft I was sitting on a raft in my pool last August listening to it. Then literally almost fell off, like, oh my God, did he just say that?
Yeah.
But the gentleman who designed the Silver Eagle program for the U.S. Mint told Bix. I mean, Bix is a very charming guy. I've had time alone with him driving from Texas to Oklahoma, and we talked. He blew my mind about a lot of things, and he's very engaging. And so he got Jack Sermon to say, yeah, my superiors, this is a guy that's been there since the beginning of the Silver Eagle program. He designed it, and he said, yeah, my superiors told me to only issue as many Silver Eagles as the fewest amount as possible without creating a public outcry. Well, there's been a public outcry. Maybe that's why they released more of them, but here they are again,
Right.
being the model of inefficiency. Could it be that they are realizing that gold and silver are not commodities, but they're strategic assets that they need to hold? I don't know. I mean, all I can tell you is that it is something that we would be very foolish to not be trying to accumulate all that we can, but they are not very open about it. And
Right.
certainly we don't see anything but export numbers. We don't see anything in terms of our production. I don't know. It's an
What
interesting question. I would hope so.
One of the things you and I had kind of explored, this is probably early on, 2, 3 years ago, we had suggested that if indeed the United States had a secret program somehow to keep and to manufacture more gold underneath the radar, the extrapolation between us was that eventually we would start seeing legislation that would hint about some of these upcoming changes. Well, that being said, so in the last couple of months, you've reported on the show, and maybe you can repeat for the audience members who don't know, speak about the number of states now that have legalized gold for all debts, public and private. Talk about all of these new legislations where, for example, here, let me see if I can bring up Nebraska. Nebraska just ending income tax on gold and silver, and also declaring that the CBDCs are not lawful money. So we're starting to see now what you and I were extrapolating a couple of years ago, the telltale signs through the policy that something very physical is just around the corner. Expand on that for the audience members who haven't tracked us for the last couple of years here on all of this new legislation for gold and silver.
Well, 13 states have already scrapped capital gains tax, which is a big deal. It's in front of many of the other legislatures. And there's a handful of them, and I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say Oklahoma, Texas, Utah. There's a handful of states that have made it. Idaho, Wyoming. These states are either talking about or have already passed legislation. Missouri, to allow gold and silver to be legal tender, to be currency for all debts, public and private. And that is the American spirit. And that's why I'm so bummed out to see Representative Mooney have Mooney lost his seat in West Virginia, or he's lost his election, I guess, whatever you want to call it. He's been someone else has taken his place. This is a guy that's been a real champion for the metals market. He just floated a bill to have all capital gains tax on a federal level be taken out, and I doubt it will pass. But he also was the one who asked the Federal Reserve through the Freedom of Information Act who's taking all their gold. He's a champion for it. There are people out there that understand it, and I hope that we see more and more of states go this way. I have signed a contract with my friends in the United Kingdom that run the Glint program. And Jason Cousins, who is the CEO of Glint, has spent a good deal of time, in speaking in front of the House and the Senate, and speaking into state legislatures here in the United States. And I think believes that there is a very valid push in many of these states to recognize all forms of tradable gold and silver to be used as legal tender. Now, most of the legislation right now reads coins made by a sovereign mint. But look, the bottom line is I never thought I'd see it in my life where it is recognized the way that it is.
Right.
And it's the beginning stages. So, yeah.
But like anything else, that was my point. They need to start with the legislation. They do it kind of under the table, under the radar. They don't really talk about the news, but they're making these moves ostensibly to prepare something physical.
It's also important to note that the states cannot issue their own currency. However, they can issue gold and silver as currency. That's in the Constitution. It's a loophole, so to speak.
Right.
So if they want to say gold and silver can be used as for transactions, that's their prerogative. They can't issue like the state currency of Florida. But they could say gold and silver coins made by a sovereign mint are indeed currency for all debts, public and private, and that is constitutional law. So kind of, I think why you're seeing these states move in this direction.
There's that, and then if you watch the Civil War movie and other predictive programming, we could find a scenario, and I think it's in the WebBot data reports also, where some states could secede, including Texas, and then create their own currency and compete. So who knows what's on the front line for that. Now, talking about the front lines and what's happening at the banking level. Last week, oddly enough, the governor of the Bank of Canada was like, don't worry, everything's fine. The system is stable. This week, they're kind of like, oh, we can see some risk in the system here. It was kind of funny to see them backtrack. And as I was talking to Bill Holter about this yesterday, what did he say? He says, yeah, the truth is ridiculed at first, then vehemently opposed, and then eventually we get the capitulation, right? The admission. We're getting there now at the banking level too. And I wanted to ask you this too. This whole idea that silver could make a radical move above $30 as per some of the charts we were looking at, the moving averages. There's a couple of analysts suggesting, including Bix too on some of his podcasts, that anything over 30 could be absolutely disastrous to some of the banks that are holding short positions in silver. Explain that a little bit to the audience members, how that works and how close we are to perhaps a catastrophic cascading effect at the banking level, and maybe why we're seeing the infighting right now between some of these regional banks and the bigger banks. They might be expecting some of this tsunami with respect to silver and their losses with their shorts. Explain that to the audience.
Oh yeah, well, silver's at $29.65, up 91 cents today. So we're well on our way there. And it's interesting when you see every time it gets near here, they keep hitting it down, and it's up again, 29.67, up 93 cents. So gold's up $35.
Yeah.
Bank of America, according to Ted Butler, is short 1 billion ounces of silver, and they're hemorrhaging. And if you are naked short, meaning you don't have the ability to deliver it, you're as dumb as a mud wall in this environment. When a country like India has imported 500 million ounces in the past 2.5 years, that's 11 times the amount of bars that are backing the contracts on COMEX right now. Those contracts are rehypothecated, means sold over and over and over and over and over again, over 1,600%. We're that close. And you see a price that blows up, you then have to have covering. And the only way to cover is to buy the metal, which adds more fuel to the fire and can put a bank out of business like that. More likely a hedge fund who's betting on the other side out of business very, very, very quickly, because when you are short, your losses are unlimited. When you are long, your losses are not unlimited. But when they are short, because it can go to zero, so that's your loss if you're long. But if you're short, the price can theoretically keep going and going and going and going and going, and you are bankrupt and done. And that's how fast it can happen. And it can bankrupt a company or a bank or a hedge fund very, 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 very fast. And I've often talked about the interview that Chris Marcus did with Bart Chilton, where he admitted all of this stuff. Yeah. Now, he didn't come out right and say that Bear Stearns failed because silver went to $21 where they held the largest short position. He intimated that it had a lot to do with it. And he asked Jamie Dimon to take that short position over, and the rest, people should check it out. Bart Chilton, the former head of the CFTC, interviewed by Chris Marcus, our mutual friend, Arcadia Economics. He told all of this stuff. He admitted it all, and then he died. So when you talk about what it could do to an institution, I mean, 1 billion ounces of silver, $30 billion worth of silver. And if it goes against you, it can become very serious, very, very fast. I think that's what he's talking about. Look, the easier way to say it is that you being these entities, the Western cabal, can only manipulate a market over an extended period of time by pushing it in the direction that it is going. And most of my career, it was U.S. equities and real estate and bond values that were ever marching higher in the face of interest rates that were falling at a 45-degree angle since 1982. And that created a tremendous amount of wealth and a tremendous interest in U.S. assets and virtually none in precious metals. That's changing. And so when you talk about trying to hold back global tide of demand using leveraged futures contracts, it's a very dangerous proposition. And I think that's what they're getting at. Once it breaks through 30, all of a sudden, there is very little resistance on its way back up to 50. So what does that mean? The technicals would say it can continue on going, and it will bankrupt a company like Bank of America like that. So I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, there was other researchers this last week saying that it was Bank of America that would be probably the first to go, as you suggest. They were also suggesting in Europe, I think Deutsche Bank might be in the same position. I thought that was interesting.
Well, and there's an awful lot of talk of HSBC Bank being the massive short right now into the May contract, the delivery. They don't want, for whatever reason, there's entities that want silver, and there is HSBC Bank that continues to short it. So they are massively short, and silver's up 94 cents today. That ain't good if you're HSBC Bank. Every one of those contracts is 5,000 ounces of silver.
Yeah.
So if you are short a huge amount, each one of those contracts now is short. Each one of those contracts is $4,700 in the hole. Well, what if you're short thousands and thousands and thousands of contracts?
Yeah.
What do? You're screwed. So either at some point you continue to throw more money to short the price to drive it down, or you get overwhelmed by a sovereign government like India or China who says, this is how we win the game. We just continue to buy and stand for delivery. And that's what they're doing. And that's why we've seen, I believe, a 200% increase in demand or in transactions on the Shanghai Gold Exchange over the past 60 days. It's outpaced the COMEX.
And
they know what's going on.
Often we talk about how in the periphery, we're going to start seeing the problems first. And let's look at the banking system now. There are reports in the last 12 or 24 hours here in Cuba that the financial banking system has completely collapsed. Cubans woke up to learn their bank accounts have been emptied. There's no cash at the ATMs. They're being forced into, I guess, an electronic version of this new currency here. None of this on the mainstream news, other than in the last couple of days. There were sporadic reports of people in Cuba having issues with their ATMs, but this seems to be developing right now. And that's similar to things that have happened across the world. We can think about in Greece in 2012-13. Do you think this is coming here? If we have these big banks like Bank of America drowning in these shorts, what's the outcome for the little guy at some point here?
Well, when you deposit your money in a bank, the bank is the owner of that money. They owe you a debt. You are an unsecured general creditor or the last to be paid. The FDIC says that and this is why people should be concerned about what's happening there, that there are 900 banks deemed to be in trouble, 350 deemed to be in imminent danger, according to the FDIC.
Yeah.
Fed Chairman Powell, what did he tell us? There will be bank failures, but not by the big banks. Well, maybe the big banks, maybe Bank of America. But you have companies like JP Morgan licking their chops, lining up, like a shark spotting a school of fish, waiting to gobble up the assets like they've been doing to consolidate the banks. And, I think it's real. It's very real. When the FDIC says this, when Janet Yellen says there will be bail-ins, when Fed Chairman Powell says there will be consolidations, to think that there won't be is just stupid. And yeah, it becomes very frightening when you see it. We just saw a bank fail a few weeks ago.
Yep.
I consider it to be the precursor of many more. When the FDIC says over 350 in imminent danger, yeah. And why aren't interest rates going down, which would alleviate the stress? Because you have the rest of the world that's sick and tired of being bullied by the West. And so they're selling treasuries and replacing with gold and with oil, which is keeping interest rates higher. Or the Federal Reserve has to come in and completely monetize it, which leads to hyperinflation, which leads to higher interest rates. Any way you look at it, the banking system is in big trouble, whether it be today or down the road. And
it's not just you. It's not just you saying that now. Billionaires on mainstream news, real estate investors are expecting 1 or 2 bank failures a week, quote unquote. Here, and a UK economist is saying also we're entering a new dark age. Serious stuff there. Let me bring up Bart Chilton again here, folks. If you haven't seen this episode, I'll bring the link down for you guys.
You
if you
have
want
to
watch it. It's a must watch. We've referred to this a couple of times, but there's always new people coming onto the show. So let me bring that up. It's like a sobering thought of reality. And the point I bring this up is people who bring up reality sometimes find the issues with their brake lines or their steering wheel in their car or accelerated cancers. I'm not sure that's the case for Bart, although it could be. It appears to be the case for all the whistleblowers at Boeing in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
And just today,
coincidentally die. Let me ask you a question, JC. What's the conversion rate on the Canadian dollar right now, roughly?
1.3, I guess.
Okay, so 1.3. So let me ask you a question. 3.62. Would a $4.5 million home in Canada be like? I mean, there's lots of them, right? Big houses, 4.5 million Canadian.
Sure.
Okay. When you hear what you just said to me about the commercial real estate sector saying there's going to be a bank failure every month. Think about this, and I've been saying this a lot lately because it just blows my mind the more that I think about it. The former One AT&T Center, the third tallest building in St. Louis, 44 stories tall, which was sold for $205 million in 2006, just sold for $3.6 million in St. Louis. The third tallest building in the whole city, which would be $4.68 million in Canadian. What I'm saying is there are residential homes all throughout Canada, and in my neighborhood, I live in a golf community in Florida. Their house is way more than $3 million here, and the third tallest 44-story tall building can be yours too for the low price of $3.6 million. Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was paid for 205 and then sold for 3.6, how much money are these banks losing? Or how about the fact that the Holiday Inn Express in Washington, D.C., which has $83 million still owed to it, the only bidder at the foreclosure auction was the lender who was owed $83 million, and they paid $18.5 million for it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about these lenders getting kneecapped, yeah, it's real. And that's when it starts to accelerate. The only reason we haven't seen it in the United States anyway, spread more into the commercial real estate sector or the residential, is because these are all non-recourse loans largely in commercial real estate. They just walk away. Here are the keys. They lose the money, their share prices go down, or their business collapses, but they're not themselves responsible for it.
That's
And
what the the governor of the Bank of Canada was saying. If you go and read the article, also he was suggesting that these banks were at risk here because of just that. We're having many loans coming up for renewal now at these new higher mortgage rates, and people are just giving back the keys,
yeah,
and or also trying to sell and increasing the offer where there's no demand. So prices are already
yes,
plummeting. That added to the new capital gains tax that Trudeau just added, it's just adding fuel to the fire. What was
yes.
interesting, earlier today too, Lloyd's admits becoming a giant UK landlord. They're suggesting here that banks are now moving to repossess your home in order to monopolize their home rental market. I don't know if that's what they're doing, or that's a way to maybe try to save their balance sheet by trying to make revenue off of these homes that people are just, avoiding their monthly payments on them. What do you see with this? Is this part of the big taking, or is this an attempt to maybe try to renormalize their balance sheets here?
I think it's it's gonna same thing is gonna happen here. Residential real estate and a low mortgage of 3 or 4% is great till you lose your job. I
Yeah,
mean, look at BlackRock. They come in and they buying up all the residential real estate.
yeah,
Yeah, you'll see that happen, and it will be owned by a handful of people. This is the Klaus Schwab moment. You'll rent and be happy after you've lost your ass so bad you don't ever want to own anything again.
yeah.
And so yeah, you'll rent from the Lloyd's of London's, the BlackRocks, the Blackstones, the big entities, and you'll be happy. So you don't ever have to worry about losing your ass like that ever again.
Desjardins Bank here in Canada is petitioning now for longer term mortgages to try to avoid some of the problems that they're facing also
Oh,
right now.
geez, that's a novel idea. I don't think people know, JC, the way the mortgages are in Canada. I was blown away when I heard that they reset every 5 years,
Mhm.
that they amortize it over 25 or whatever, but that it's reset every 5 years. So think about that.
Yeah,
People who overextended and bought 5 years ago at the lowest interest rates ever, and now their payments have just way gone up, tripled. How do
yeah,
you do that?
yeah. It's gonna hurt. Oh, it's definitely gonna hurt. I wanted to go back to this idea of the people speaking the truth and then suddenly dying. Um, where is the article here? This one here. Hold on, just lost the screen there. Yeah, the Slovak prime minister has just been shot several times in the chest here. That's earlier today. Things are pretty rough, Andy. As we're looking at politics around the world, this guy had just recently announced that he was against the WHO treaty, and now he's shot. We talked about these whistleblowers at Boeing. Treacherous times, I think. Both with Jay Widener last week and with Jay yesterday. There's a lot of weird stuff going around here. What do you recommend for people in terms of preparing for all of this? Because it appears to me that we're going to see more and more and more of this here. And I'm not advocating for violence. I'm just suggesting
Neither am I.
there's a war happening behind the scenes, and it seems to be coming front scene for everybody to see here. How do you think we're going to play out this summer
Well,
here?
look at what Cliff wrote right below that article. That they've left our borders wide open. We have 12 million people here or more illegally. If 1/10 of 1% wants to create problems,
Yeah.
1/10 of 1%, that's 12,000 people. 3% want to create problems. That's 360,000 people. That's more than any standing army.
Hmm.
5%, 600,000 people that want to screw with the country, you
Hmm.
know, and keep doing the math. So yeah, I do think that there will be problems. And then as you get towards an election where half of the country is upset by the outcome, to expect there to be unity in anything nowadays, I think is nuts. And when you have a poll that roughly 50% of Democrats think violence is okay to achieve their goals, and about 45% of Republicans think the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know the validity of the poll, but the point of it is that, yeah, I think that
It's a tinderbox.
Yeah, it is a tinderbox, 100%. And I think what Cliff wrote there is very accurate.
Yeah.
There certainly we don't have unity and alignment in ideology and anything but. And
Yeah.
you know, I like we talked about last week, the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who says, yeah, if the money we're giving the Ukraine isn't good enough, and we're going to have to put boots on the ground, and Washington's going to have to get involved. And just the way that he said it bothered me more than anything. He said, we'll have to get our service women and our service men involved. Really? How about
Uh-huh.
how about stop being so woke? How about just speak normally?
How about
And
no?
but
Yeah.
that's just indicative of the whole
Yeah.
system. We're all so divided in the way that we think of things, the way we speak, what we value. And it's as if we've lost our bearings in a big way. So, yeah, I hate violence too, but to expect there not to be more when all these people are in this country where you have these morons in Dearborn, Michigan, being allowed to say death to America, they literally ought to be thrown in a raft and said goodbye and never let back in. But for whatever reason, we think it's okay to let these people have their free speech and they're here illegally.
Yeah.
And it's just not cool.
You want to talk about politics for last segment? We're already 40 minutes into it, and this is just for the fun of it now. In the last couple of days, I've seen a lot of news articles, a couple of interviews, including the one you and I played at the end of last week, where CNN was interviewing Joe Biden and giving him like a very clear, bad economic data for his last tenure as president here, moving into the election. It, do you feel it's possible that the game is shifting and they want to replace Biden, that they're going to try to hang the bad economy around his neck to maybe change candidates? I saw an interview on Alex Jones the other day, and he's saying, yeah, we're maybe expecting here a switch over to Gavin Newsom. Do you see that right now? Because in the last rally Trump had it was in New Jersey a couple of days ago, he had 80,000 people there at the rally. Like, holy crap, the momentum seems to be, and he's ahead in a lot of these swing states also, so says the latest poll, I think on Monday. What do you think? Are we going to see a changeover? Do we even see an election? What are your thoughts, Andy?
I can't look, put your political aspirations aside. If this was Uncle Joe coming to visit you for Christmas, how psyched would you be to have a conversation with Uncle Joe? Or
Mhm.
is it creepy Uncle Joe's coming here again? I mean, anyone who would say that this guy is fit to run the country, I mean, this is part of the lack of unity. I think the
Yeah.
right says, my God, this dude can't even, you know, tie his own shoes and make it across the house where, and remember why he walked over there to begin with. I think if I'm surprised that they nominated him. I'm surprised that it's gone this far. I'm surprised that he didn't bow out gracefully and say, folks, I'm sure you can all tell that age is catching up with me. It's been great, but I'm going to pass the torch. Certainly not to Kamala, but to someone else. And the
Right.
fact that it hasn't happened shocks me. So
Well,
if
it shocks
indeed
us
we
here
see
in
that
Canada
Indiana
too.
Jones switch, wouldn't surprise me.
It shocks us here in Canada too. It's been one scandal after the other for Prime Minister Trudeau, and he's still clinging on to power. So says the National Post, the Toronto Star. Also, in the last couple of months, everybody seems to be befuddled as to why he's staying there. He was asked by another reporter yesterday, I think from the Globe and Mail, about his dismal polling numbers and why we should even be listening to him. And he just said, "Oh, I got to save the world from climate change, and so I'm not leaving." So everyone's like, "Okay." So we're all surprised at that level here too.
It's
That's big.
crazy. It's crazy that half of the country would think this dude is
Yeah.
capable of running the country.
Do they
God
really like?
help us if he wins again. I truly believe we're in a
Uh,
very, very dark place if that happens.
yeah, it's crazy times. Hey, in the show yesterday, as we finish on this too, Bill got some people excited about constitutional silver. There was a lot of new people watching the show again, asking Bill questions about, hey, if I'm starting in this and we're going to have some issues with the banking level, I need to barter, and I need to kind of prep myself for maybe a transition period of time. What do I need best? And he was really looking at the constitutional silver here for the States. Also here for Canada, guys, you can go to mfbullion.ca. Andy, how is the inventory right now on these dimes and quarters for the people who are watching the show who might want to get some in their own possession here?
Shockingly good, to be honest with you. That's one of the things that's so confusing, JC. You got positive real return in the 10-year treasury if you believe the nonsense coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You got a strong dollar. You got the public shedding. If you look at the ETF statistics, they're falling into 45-degree angle, meaning they're not participating. They're selling into the rally. Bill, who's one of my dear friends, will tell you a lot of that is actually the insiders doing what's called share redemption, pulling the metal out of the ETFs to make it look as though it's lacking participation, but they're actually taking their shares and redeeming them for metal. These are only the commercial banks who have the baskets. But yeah, it's shocking to me that the pre-65 constitutional silver is in as good a supply and is priced as low as it is.
That's a good premium too, compared to like not so long ago. That was
Yeah, it was
really
during the pandemic. It was 11, 12, 13 bucks over the price of silver.
yeah.
Right now, I'll tell you real quick. It is what is it at? I'll tell you real quick. Sorry to do that on the fly, but it is, open up here, pre-65 constitutional is, sorry.
And guys, just so you know, these posters, when I put them up, you know, prices change every day with market conditions, and this is why
$3 over right now.
Fill out this the form here and get to Andy. He'll give you the best possible price here for the Beyond Mystic audience. You can do so, of course, at beyondmystic.net/silver. If you're looking for gold and silver in Canada, also please check out mfbullion.ca. Right now, they have these 10-ounce silver bars on a discount here at $2.99 over spot. While you're there, you might also want to ask if they still have some Canadian pre-68 silver. I know it's a lot harder to find in Canada, but you never know. Sometimes some do come in and you might be the lucky one. So just contact them there at mfbullion.ca if you're interested in that. Anything else you're looking at the radar for this week?
Did I mention to you a couple weeks ago the Cloward pivot theory? I think I did, didn't I?
Yeah, we had a conversation 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah, and so you overwhelm the system, you create a bunch of people who overwhelm the entitlement system, will overwhelm the inner cities. You use the media on your behalf to create sympathy for the left, to create anger by the left that the welfare system is unfair, and that you create a serfdom of people who will only vote for the Democrats. Well, you know, from the too stupid to be stupid category, I always take that from Billy. The House Democrats just voted unanimously to give illegal immigrants representation in Congress and the Electoral College. They're already all in the blue states. Yeah. So House seats and Electoral College votes will be added to the areas with the most illegals. And unless the Senate passes the invasion by design bill. And it is by design, but good luck in getting that passed. But you can see what they're trying to do. When you talk about the elections, they're trying to, you let 12 million people in here. They ain't going to vote for the right. Why would they? If they're getting all of their freebies taken away and maybe even get sent back to where they're from, this is a scary time. It truly is. And I hope the American spirit can rise up. I hope that the election happens. I hope that there is perceived at least in being fair, and that it's done in one day and over at night, not 2 weeks like it was before. So yeah, I think a lot is hinging on this next election. God willing, we make it there.
Yep. Guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Andy, for being here. Thank you guys for being in the live chat. If you want to join me at 3 p.m. Eastern with Mr. Jim Willie, the financial crash here with Trump Knows as the title, we're going to be going through the 20 reasons why Jim Willie thinks here that the gold market will last at least 2 more years. So you don't want to miss that episode.
Jim Willie is awesome. He's a very smart man. He deserves to be given a lot of credibility, and everyone should listen to it. I'm going to try and listen to that if I can, but give him my regards nonetheless. JC, I love you, brother. I'll see you next week. Everyone else, stay well. Crazy times. Chinese church, may you live in interesting times. These sure are.
I love you, Andy. Have a good day, and we'll see you again soon.
Be well.
Take care. All right, bye.